Hey. Hi, everybody. I'm Rachel Werner, my Fed trainer, and I'm joined by Lucy Morgan, my Fed trainer's founder. And we're here to talk a little bit about federal grants because something tells me that you've been thinking about it these past, few days. There's just been a little bit in the news, just a little bit. So I thought, why don't we just kind of have a little bit of Q&A. I'm going to talk to Lucy because I know that she has a lot of experience in federal grants. And so I thought maybe she should, you know, we should have a conversation. She can share some insights and some perspective that I think might be beneficial. So Lucy, I'm going to start off with a first question. Should be pretty easy. So tell me about your experience with federal grants.
And I love that question because really started thinking about that two different ways. My first thought was, well, I've been in federal grants, working with federal grants for 20 years. Actually, it was 20 years ago that I made the shift out of corporate America into a nonprofit to start making a bigger difference in my community. And then I thought, well, my experience with federal grants could also encompass what has been my past experience with federal grants, not just my personal experience. And the word that kept coming into my mind was the word perspective. And so I was a big proponent of letting people know about this site called usaspending.gov when it was first implemented in about 2008 after the financial crisis and the meltdown, and then what we called ARA, which was the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. Um, and so I just went out this morning because I was just kind of curious where things are at. And I think if you look from when I first got involved in grants in that first decade, what I saw was grants just about doubled in the size of what was going out in federal grants. And then when we look in the last decade, between 2015 and 25, about the same thing happened. So we had gotten up to, in 2005, we're up at about the 600 billion mark. And now we've been consistently over $1 trillion. And the last fiscal year was $1.2 trillion in federal grants. So the size of that has doubled. And the reason I bring that up is that with that increase in spending, we probably have a lot of new people in our community who are relatively new to federal grants, as the work that needed to be done has been funded through this increase in federal grants. And like I said, in my lifetime of federal grants, it's 4x what it was when I started. And so when I look back and I go, okay, what has been my experience with federal grants? Well, let's see. We've had 5 administrations since I started working in federal grants. We've had 2 government shutdowns where of varying lengths. We've had 2 government shutdowns. I don't even know how many sequestrations that we encountered over the years. 2 major crises, right? We had a financial meltdown and then we had COVID, and both of those crises dictated that we ended up with large stimulus packages. We had, first ARA, then we had ARPA, then we had the Inflation Reduction. I mean, there's always been some follow on to whatever crisis it is. And so I bring that up not because I think that will make you feel better, but because I want to give you a little hope that these storms that we've been experiencing do come and go. When you're in the middle of it, it may feel like you're never going to get out of it. But in the perspective of the greater scheme of things, we will get through this too. And I just want to remind people, because sometimes people have a certain view of the federal government, like it's very stable. And I would say we don't get into federal grants for stability. What we get into federal grants is to make a bigger difference in our community, because federal grants are the single largest form of grant funding in the world. So, I mean, that's a pretty big draw, and we don't get stability and lots of money. We get these seasons of instability, and we get a lot of money to help our communities. And that is really what I want you to remember when I talk about what my experience has been with federal grants.